Okay, we will call this regular meeting of the GCC CISD Board of Trustees to order at 6 o'clock. Miss Barat Timms, was the meeting properly posted?
Yes, it was.
And do we have a quorum?
Yes, we do.
Thank you. Okay.
All right, good afternoon, President Guy, school board members, and Dr. O'Brien. The opening exercises for April 1st, 2024 board meeting will be presented by students from Travis Elementary. First, however, we will begin with a prayer led by Mr. Sampson.
Your hats. Heavenly Father, we are blessed to be here. We are blessed for all the things that you give us. We are blessed to have a school district that is very, very good. Father, I thank you for the people who are here tonight, and they were able to get here tonight safely. Father, I hope that we can be able to do the things that we're supposed to do as a school board, as a community, and as a administrative, as well as teachers, and as well as students. We thank you again, oh Heavenly Father. In Christ Jesus' name we pray. Amen.
All right, the pledges will be led by Avery Standridge and Arian Smith. Okay, thank you. You may be seated. The following students from Travis Elementary will be singing This Is Where Giants Are Made and Let's Party. Let's welcome Damian Hernandez, Sophia Perez, Aubrey Garza, Lillian Benavides, Avery Standridge, Zion Gallo, Arian Smith, Danny Petre, Chloe Alexander. All right, these amazing students are under the direction of GCM alumni Nathan Hinton, music teacher at Travis Elementary, and Dr. Carrie Lonius. Thank you, Travis Elementary students and staff.
Thank you, guys. And do we have any parents in the audience, family members? If you'll stand so we can recognize you. Thank you for sharing your students.
Thank you, Dr. Lonius, for sharing your kiddos with us this evening. Wonderful job, guys. Thank you all.
All right, this is part of the evening where we have board recognition, and we're very excited to take this moment to recognize some outstanding students and staff. First, we have Miss Susan Jackson. She will recognize our National Texas Association of Future Educators state competitors.
Good evening, school board and President Tiffany Guy and Superintendent Dr. O'Brien. We have some really cool honors that I would like to share with you tonight. Tonight, we are recognizing the following students and teachers for achieving superior honors at the Texas Association of Future Educators state competition. These students placed in the top 2% of their event, advancing to the national competition, which will be held in Washington, D.C. this June. So first, we have, ready? We have Jenna Flores from Sterling High School on Teacher Creative Material, Junior High and High School. Next, we have Sally Hart, 11th grader from Sterling High School, Interactive Bulletin Board, Junior High, High School. Next, we'll recognize Jerica Hatcher, 11th grade from Sterling, Interactive Bulletin Board, Junior High, High School. Next, from Sterling, we have Joseph Hoffpower, 12th grader, Interactive Bulletin Board, Elementary. Next, from Sterling, we have Dreja Hernandez, 12th grader, Teacher Created Materials, Junior High, High School. Finally, we would like to recognize the amazing sponsor, Ms. Shannon Rogers. Also, at this time, if Nathan Chaddock is in the room. No. Okay. So next, from Goose Creek Memorial High School, we'd like to recognize Maritza Vasquez, 10th grader with Interactive Bulletin Board, Elementary. And next, we would like to congratulate the GCM sponsor, Ms. Deborah Turner, for the amazing job she did, and Principal Kathy Holland is here. Thank you. That now completes our nominations for Future Teacher Association.
Okay, at this time, we'd like to welcome up Mr. Ray Levan, Director of Fine Arts, who will be recognizing our TMEA All-State Choir and TDA All-State Dancers.
Good evening, Dr. O'Brien, Board of Trustees, President Guy. It is my pleasure to once again be in front of you today to recognize our wonderful fine arts students, and we would like to begin with our TMEA All-State Choir students. These students were selected from tens of thousands of students throughout the state via a rigorous audition process. This honor is the very highest honor a student can receive from the Texas Music Education Association. So our All-State Choir members are, first, Miss Sarah Hilliard from Ross S. Sterling High School, accompanied by her teachers, head choir director, Mr. Dylan Fornshell, and assistant Cruz Salinas. All right, next from Goose Creek Memorial High School, we have Miss Alexa Dela Cruz. And also from Goose Creek Memorial High School, we have Mr. Michael Martinez. They are accompanied by their teachers, head choir director, Miss Holly Llewellyn, and Mr. Jalon Douglas, who is the assistant. Dr. O'Brien isn't used to someone looking at him eye to eye, evidently. How about another hand for these wonderful choir students? All right, moving right along, we would like to acknowledge our TDEA All-State Dance students. And just like the choir students, this is the very highest honor a student can receive from the Texas Dance Education Association. First up, we have Colonel Madeline Vela from Ross S. Sterling High School, representing the Sterling Stars. And she's accompanied by their director's head director, Miss Lori Alexander, and assistant director, Miss Joanna Isis. Next up, we have Colonel Natalie Canales from Lee High School, accompanied by head director, Miss Alice Henriksen. If you notice, dancers always know how to take pictures, like right on cue. And last but certainly not least, captain of the GCM Dazzlers, Miss Madison Cobb from Goose Creek Memorial High School. She is accompanied by Miss Angie Upshaw, who is the head director, and assistant director, Miss Julia Birch. How about a hand for these wonderful dancers and their teachers? Thank you. That concludes our fine arts recognitions for this evening.
At this time, we'd like to welcome Amanda Kennington, who will recognize our Texas Community Challenge and Wellness Awards.
Good evening, Board of Trustees. Thank you for having the Employee Wellness Director, Stephanie Myers, and I here tonight to celebrate a few individuals and the school community on successful participation in the 2024 It's Time Texas Community Challenge. The pledges of support from the GCCISD School Health Advisory Council, the Board of Trustees, and our Be Well Baytown Collaborative and administrators across the district encouraged 473 participants to register and make healthier choices during the 8-week community challenge. Goose Creek placed third overall out of all large school districts and earned a grand total of 3,025,150 points. Give it up. And actually, Board President Tiffany Guy, she logged the longest distance, accomplishing 711 miles and 608 activity minutes throughout the challenge. Thank you for role modeling those healthy behaviors. So that was over 6,845 activity minutes for Ms. Guy. So thank you for role modeling those healthy behaviors. Thank you so much. We're also honored to recognize 3 schools that earned first place on the leaderboard in the campus competition. Each will receive a salad bowl trophy donated by Awards and Engraving to proudly display for the 2024-2025 school year. As I call your campus, please join us at the front to accept your award. And once all 3 schools have been announced, we'll take a group photo. The high school salad bowl trophy is awarded to Peter Highlands Center High School, Principal Tricia Times, and Wellness Champion Alice Ricks. Congratulations. If y'all just wait up front, we'll take a group picture at the end. The junior high salad bowl trophy is awarded to Baytown Junior, Principal Judy Mackion, and Wellness Champion Michael Contreras. Congratulations. And last but certainly not least, the elementary school salad bowl trophy is awarded again to Harlem Elementary. Principal Betty Baca and Wellness Champion Sherry Young. Ms. Young inspired others to participate in the challenge with a whopping 97 referrals. And a fun fact, also Harlem was ranked 20th in the state out of all of the schools.
All right. So let's thank everybody for their participation in the It's Time Challenge. We are going to actually acknowledge all of our employees who completed the Community Challenge participants as they continue to work with the employees and keeping them healthy throughout the year. So we would like to actually invite Sam Chapa to come up. He is our GCC ISD wellness warehouse foreman to the front to be recognized. Mr. Chapa has had a lot of tough competition this year, but accumulated the highest individual points to total 118,500 points. He is the fourth-time leader of the Baytown GCC ISD, its Texas Time Challenge, and is arguably the greatest of all times. Right? He is also known as the Sam Chapa. He continues to motivate others while working on his own fitness and inspires colleagues to make healthy choices. We would like to recognize him for his efforts today, and congratulations and thank you, Sam. So, in conjunction with our 23-24 GCC ISD Wellness Program, we also have other employees we'd like to acknowledge this evening for our fitness center exercises and that have reached their fitness goals. So if they are here today, I would ask for you to please come up. We have Shanique Blanchard, who logged a 3,882 minutes, and she actually had 5,000 points. So we're recognizing the employees who had at least 5,000 points or more. Is she here tonight? Okay. Yes, for the fitness center. We also have Jorge Gomez, who had over 5,000 points. We have Donnie Lacey. Donnie's here. Who had 5,880 points. I have Bruce Cortez. Come on, Bruce. Who had over 6,000 points. I have Sam Chapa again, who logged over 7,700 points. I have Gloria Minden Gallegos, who had over 7,000 points. And then we also have Ed Matier, who had over 9,000 points.
Okay, and lastly, we have Ms. David, Executive Director of Community Engagement Team. She's here to recognize members of her community engagement team at the TSPRA.
Good evening, President Guy, Dr. O'Brien, board members. The Goose Creek CISD Community Engagement Team attended the Texas School Public Relations Association, TSPRA, conference, and we are proud to honor that we have taken home 11 bronze and silver awards, 18 gold awards, 1 best of category, and 2 crystal awards this year. Thank you. Yeah. Districts from all over the state entered their best work, and once again, Goose Creek CISD has proved to be one of the most innovative and creative PR teams in the profession. Our team was awarded for our principal playbook, multiple photos, videos, marketing campaigns, and logos. Goose Talks, our community feedback process, was awarded a Crystal Award as well as a photo portfolio. Multiple gold stars were given for our Spanish outreach efforts, such as our Spanish podcast, magazine, and events. And in addition, our team hosted a packed room during our training session, Sync or Sync, where we shared where we shared with other districts how to engage campus social media coordinators, webmasters, students, and the community. So I'm so proud to introduce my incredible team, the community engagement team who worked on these projects, Dr. Norma Martinez, Dr. Anna Espinoza, Brittany Culpepper, Come on, guys. They're usually behind the camera, so they don't know. They're nervous to come up. Mima Trujillo, Carrie Pryor Newman, Julia Trujillo, Angela Sanders, and Veronica Dyson. Congratulations.
We are on number 4, citizens participation. Do we have anybody signed up today? No. Okay. Then approval of minutes for the March 4th regular board meeting and the March 20th budget workshop. Was everybody at both of those?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. So
Can we
we can
take
take
them
together then.
Move to approve both. Second.
Okay. I have a motion by Mr. Clem, a second by Mr. Campisi. Any questions? All in favor, raise your hand. We have 6-4, 0 against. Motion passes. And discussion items, Dr. O'Brien.
All right, that was a fun recognitions and acknowledgement section. We now have our superintendent's report, starting with District of Innovation, DOI renewal update.
All right, good evening, Board of Trustees. Good evening, Dr. O'Brien. We're here to present the renewal process for our District of Innovation plan. And so we want to give you some of the specifics as we start that process for the district. And so just as a real quick recap, a District of Innovation, or a DOI, is something that the legislation passed back in 2015 under House Bill 1842. And what it did was it allowed districts to have some flexibility in meeting some of the requirements in the Texas Education Code. And so there are certain requirements or certain specific codes that have been identified by TEA that allow districts to apply for a waiver. And that waiver, if they apply for 4 or 5 waivers, those are all collectively put into a plan called a DOI plan. And so our district went through that process a while back. In 2018, the board deemed the Instructional Leadership Council as the committee to vet the DOI plan and recommend the DOI plan to the Board of Trustees. And so, with the first time they went through the process as a committee, it was recommended in 2019 to the Board of Trustees, and it was approved at that time. So we had several exemptions at that time in our initial DOI plan. Since that time, there's been several amendments. There's been 3 specific amendments. The most recent amendment was last August of 2023, and that amendment addressed teacher certification, and we put our adjunct educator piece into the DOI, which gave us the ability to hire teachers who are not certified at an at-will basis, and it allowed them a year to get certified. Okay. In the state of Texas, do y'all want me to wait for a second? Okay, sorry. In the state of Texas, the DOI plan has a 5-year term, and it has to be renewed or it will expire every 5 years. So we wanted to talk. So we're starting that process. Ours is up in 2019. It was initiated. So now our initial DOI plan is up. So we need to create a renewal plan. So we want to talk about that process. So on March 20th, our ILC met to review a draft DOI plan and provide feedback so that we could craft and take feedback and create a renewal plan for the board. And so during that meeting, we went through a process where we reviewed our current DOI plan. We also looked at items that the ILC recommended keeping currently in our DOI plan that we want to continue. We also looked at items that we considered adding. Over the last 5 years, several requirements have been deemed as DOI eligible, and so we presented some of those items to our ILC. And then also we looked at items we needed to remove because they were unnecessary or outdated. And so at that meeting, we received feedback from our ILC. They provided that to us, and then we created a draft plan from that meeting. Our ILC will meet again to vote and approve that draft plan. It's currently on our website. It was also sent to you guys last Thursday evening. And we're required to post that for 30 days, and then we will have a public meeting. We'll have an ILC meeting that's open to the public before the May 6th board meeting, where we will present that final plan to our ILC. They'll vote if they want to recommend it to the board, and then we'll bring that to the board at the May 6th board meeting, or at least that's our intention. And then the board will have an opportunity at that time to approve or amend the DOI renewal plan. So that's the process. We did want to show you do have the details, and it's online as far as what the draft plan looks like. So in detail, you can see what's being proposed or recommended. We did want to give a quick overview of what's in the DOI renewal plan. So first thing is the first day of instruction. This was previously included in our original DOI plan. We're recommending that we keep this. It allows some flexibility with the district on the first day of school. Currently, TEC, Texas Education Code, says that we're required to start school by the 4th, start on the 4th Monday in August, but it allows us to start a little bit earlier, provide some flexibility there. Also, the teacher certification piece, we're recommending keep it as is. It was just amended this past August, and so we felt like we've updated it as needed. There's a piece in there about probationary contracts. All new teachers to the district are on a probationary contract for 3 years. We're recommending that we keep that piece in place. There's an item on class size waivers and notifications that we're recommending keeping, and then also teaching planning and preparation time, where if teachers volunteer to do another assignment during their conference and they're compensated for it, then we will allow that to happen. Of course, the teacher, must volunteer, and there must be compensation involved. And so the ILC voted for all these items 100% to keep these in the renewal plan. Ms. Susan Jackson is now going to talk about some items that we're recommending adding that weren't currently in the plan, as well as some pieces that we're recommending remove.
Okay, good afternoon again. So what the new components of the plan that was voted, and every one of these components were voted at 100%, just for upfront. So school day interruptions, we've heard that term unfunded mandates. That's basically the mandatory tutorials that have to happen. So we would try those during their AI time. If we can't get them, we would try them after school. We would try them on Saturday. But if they don't come, now it's held to our accountability. It's a PEMS reportable document. And so this allows us to pull the kid maybe at lunch, with the parents' conversation of saying, hey, if you're not going to leave your child up here after school, we're going to have to get them during school because this is our accountability as well. They can't just opt out of it. So that's what the school day interruption is. It's really built around tutoring. The 90% rule for class attendance, this really came up because virtual school doesn't have, their attendance is weighted on course completion, not 90% attendance. And so this is really to address that situation with virtual school. It also allows what we were already doing, which is the principal's plan. So if we had a kid who was in a car wreck, passed all their assignments, was getting their assignments, then the principal would put together what they call a principal plan and approve that attendance. So that's the only thing that would change, is that it's now in our DOI, but it's a practice that we were already following.
What about the kid that just doesn't come to school?
You still have to get the 90%. So we're not saying
How's that worded in the plan?
we're saying, so on here, what you've got,
in the big document.
it basically says you have to go through the same requirements as the principal plan. A whole committee come together and determine, did you meet the requirements? The entire committee was very adamant on not saying this is a blanket situation. They have to earn their credit for that seat time.
Funding. That hits funding.
Yes, correctly.
Okay.
And that's one of the things we talked about, is it can't hurt our attendance. So these are for extenuating circumstances and really our virtual school. And they're funding.
How is virtual school funded?
Actually, it's amazing. It's funded on the course completion.
How do we get that for everybody?
I wish we could, and I can tell you that we are sitting at about 98 to 99% fully funded for virtual school.
That's awesome.
For attendance.
Thank you.
So I have a question then. If virtual school is already funded on course completion, is this a necessary addition to
The laws don't match, and so that's one of the things we have talked about with several school districts are putting that in, because if you already had the principal's plan, you really didn't have to have this, but this kind of takes over the situation that the law says you have to be in their 90% seat time, but virtual school is funded on course completion. It contradicts each other.
So what about those students who have access to a doctor to write notes for them for 2 months of absence?
Right. It still has to go before the committee, what they call that has a teacher, somebody that's on the counselor. It has to have usually the SWI in there. A student support team is the one that completes that with the principal plan. So it doesn't change. They have to meet all the extenuating requirements. And then they may say, hey, you've got to do some night school, and that'll take care of your stuff.
Okay.
So by no means do we want to, it is our funding, and our teachers are very adamant that they want the kids sitting in the seat time.
Yeah.
The next one is the campus behavior coordinator. So what that is another law that came in that said, hey, you have to have one person on each campus responsible for the behavior coordinator. We're such a large district, every single assistant principal is the behavior coordinator for that group of kids. So it would not make sense to say that Ricky Clem is the behavior coordinator for a student that fell under Tiffany Guy. So that's that exemption, just saying that all of our APs are considered behavior coordinators. Ejection of individuals from a facility. Before, there was some specific guidelines on if a adult, like a parent, came into a game and was creating an unruly situation, that before we could remove them for our facilities, we would have to do some things like the warning and several other things. So this is at our protection to say, hey, if you're misbehaving, cussing people out, fighting, doing something like that, that we have the authority to eject you from our facilities. And these are for adults. And then the last one is dyslexia notification upon placement in DAEP. And this is the new law that passed that said if you are a dyslexic student and you were caught, let's say, doing something that was a mandatory placement and you're placed in DAEP, upon the return, we have to tell you that you can be tested for SPED. I have to ask you if you want to be tested for SPED. It may not relate. So the consensus from the committee was there was not an educational need for you to be tested for special education. That is more undue cost and time on a district if there's not an educational need. Any questions over these?
I think my only concern is still the attendance piece. And so I guess, will we be able to, like, if we approve this and we kind of track those kids, like, let's track and see how many of our students are falling under that and see if we need to revisit? I mean, are pieces of this, can they be, I know we can add things to it. Can we take things away if we feel like?
We could always amend it. Yes, ma'am.
Okay.
On the one about ejection, you saying an individual that's on the campus or whatever, not?
It could be a spectator that is an adult that came to our facilities and maybe didn't have the correct behavior.
Okay.
And so it would be a
I
severe.
didn't hear all of it.
Yes,
I'm
sir. I'm sorry.
Yeah. That's it.
Okay. In my defense, the minimum attendance for class credit or final grades under the draft written plan is just one little paragraph that says we can give credit based on mastery instead of attendance. And it doesn't say except for or thus and to. So is that going to be administrative policy? Is it gonna
We
be
already have
code of-
those guidelines.
Where is it?
It's in our general guidelines for our, it's in our.
Where can Ricky Clem click to read it?
Okay, so it's the document that I'm having a blank on that, is Ellen in here? Ellen, it's the, yeah, but
Okay.
isn't it also in our planning guide, the big, thank you, our educational planning guide.
Thank you.
Okay.
Okay, one more question
And
about
I
that.
want
Go
to
ahead.
elaborate on it a little bit. So in the DOI and the local innovation, it says Goose Creek will develop administrative guidelines. And so I think our intention is to take those guidelines and apply them as they are. The intent of putting this in our DOI is if there is an exception where a student has, let's say, a type of illness or another type of extenuating circumstance where the campus leadership believes that the student has mastered all the content and they've done their due diligence and they're still not able to attend night school for whatever reason, then we can grant, by going through the process, we can grant them a waiver, so to speak, on that attendance recovery. I don't think the intent is to increase attendance problems. So
Wouldn't those kids have been put on homebound instruction by then?
Not necessarily. They're doing that less and less now.
Okay.
but it allows some flexibility within those specific cases. It's not meant to be applied to all students who have attendance problems. We'll still follow the guidelines in place. And so that's the reason why we have it in here, to have that flexibility if needed.
And it's not something that we would necessarily go out and advertise, you know what I'm saying? It's something that we would use. Really, we're already doing it in the principal's plan, and we're not going to change that process.
One question, as Tiffany mentioned earlier on the tracking, so we have a system in place to track those students, and then we will know that, readily identify them?
Yes, there's a paperwork packet that has to be filled out on what they did, who the committee was that met with that kid. So every single campus has a copy of exactly everyone that they were put on that kind of plan.
Okay.
It's usually less than a handful at each campus.
Do we see it on, what level do you have the most that are on that, meaning grade level, that you see that happening more with? Is it based upon illness and more so a child that may be ill?
Usually it's illness. We've had, a couple where maybe a parent was diagnosed with cancer and the child was transporting the parent, and we would have to make up time for that child. There's usually severe circumstances. At the 6 years I was at GCM, I don't think we did it for more than 10 total in the 6 years.
Thanks.
Okay, so what is not included? So we ran this through our attorneys, and they said, you can take out the duty-free lunch because it's already in the Texas Education Code, something that you can't mess with anyway, pretty much. And then admission and enrollment for waivers for pre-K. The reason Dr. Bollinger had me do these is because that was kind of my idea, and I tried to get away with it, and to be honest, it didn't work. So we would have many campuses that had a kid who was turning 4 on September 5th. And they wouldn't qualify, but we knew that kid was very much a high-achieving kid, and we wanted to get them in. And so some districts did that, and the attorney said, no, you can't do that. You can't let them in, period. And the second one that we tried is to say that, hey, any future mandates that are dropped down, the board would be able to say we're not going to do that. And the attorney said, no, if TA says you have to do those mandates, you have to do them. So those are the ones that we removed. 2 of them were really great ideas, but they didn't let me do it. Our attorney said it's not legal with TEA. TEA had already told us you can't do that, but, we tried it. I tried.
So our point in presenting this was, first of all, to make you aware of the process, that there's a 30-day, notice, and it's put on the website, and then we're going to bring this back up for approval on May 6th. If there's items in here that we need to consider adjusting, adding, or pulling, we would like that feedback. So far, I think that there's some questions or unrest with the attendance items. So if that's something that we need to discuss more, provide more information, or make an adjustment with the plan that we bring to the board on May 6th, let us know that, and then we can make that adjustment. We'll talk to ILC when we meet with them again, and then we'll bring the renewal plan on May 6th for approval.
So that feedback needs to be received by this Friday.
Speaking only for myself, I'm okay with the attendance piece based on what all you guys shared with me about administrative guidelines, et cetera.
And, one of the things that could be considered, we're only saying that we're going to add this. We could come back and provide that exact guideline to the board. So if that would create some peace, we could do that.
I'm okay with it. I would like to know that it's being tracked, though, just because I would like to know that it's not like getting out of hand. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
When is that next ILC meeting to approve the draft?
So we haven't scheduled the date, but it's before May 6th, and so I think we've penciled in May 2nd or 3rd, or just a few days before.
It has to be posted as a public meeting, right?
Yes, it has to be posted as a public meeting, and then our draft plan has to sit on the website for 30 days. So we posted it last Thursday, so that puts us around May 1st or 2nd. So we're going to schedule that meeting right after that.
Okay, thanks.
So because it's a draft, it can be modified within that 30-day window.
Yes, and we can. My understanding is that we can bring a different plan to the board based off the ILC is going to vote to approve. So if they vote and go a different direction on some of these items, then we'll bring that amendment to the board, and then also the board can approve pending a few changes. So they can take out item C. We'll approve the DOI renewal plan minus A, B, or C, and then so the board has ultimate authority to approve or not approve what's presented.
Just a reminder to the board, the ILC is comprised of how many people, and what are their roles?
So there's one from every single campus that's voted on, and then we have district and community representatives on there. And they were all there, community and district. And I will say that we didn't bring all the items because some of the committee removed some items that were on there.
Thank you.
Great, thank you.
Other questions? All right, Ms. Jackson, don't go anywhere. Next up is academic accountability update. Mr. Clem, she already has the trophy, so.
Y'all didn't get rid of me. Okay, so this is my team. I'm Dr. Akers, Olivia Callahan, James is here, and we are going to, I want to say thank you first. I missed the tape report. You all gave me a lot of grace with the family emergency, so I really appreciate it. I did go back and listen, and there was some follow-up that the board wanted, and so I'm hoping that we will be able to provide you the follow-up that you requested. So the way that we are graded is based on how we perform. The actual term is called relative performance, and that's how we perform against districts that look like us, meaning they meet the same, not size requirement, but they meet the same demographic and low socioeconomic status. So what we did was we pulled the districts around us within 10% points of that same demographic. So you will see large schools and you will see smaller schools. So this will give you an accurate representation. I know that some Some were concerned that the tape report put us in a bad light, but that is not a jest of our accountability standing. The accountability is based on our relative performance and growth, and you'll hear more about that. So the last official ratings that we received in the district, we were actually a 92, but had to receive a B because we had a targeted campus. And that anytime you have a targeted campus, then you have to take a B. We had an 89. If you'll notice, under growth, there were some districts that outperformed us, but in CCMAR, we had one district that outperformed us. But the CCMR is what pulled up that percent to give us that what we would have been a 92 received an 89. So now we're going to move into the 22-23, how we performed. So what you'll see is Goose Creek and our comparable districts around us, how we performed at the approaches, meets, and masters compared to the districts surrounding us. And overall, we were third in that group in our reading and ELA. In math, you will see that we performed at a 72 for approaches, 41 meets, and 20% masters, at second in that group for all of 3 through 8 in algebra. For science, you can see we're scoring at the top at about a 72%, 42, and 18% in science 5 through 8. You will definitely see a dip, and we all at this table know that social studies is a concern. It's typically social studies at the 8th grade era. We do pretty well in U.S. history, and we have a plan in place that we're going to work on. And at this point, I'm going to pass it to Livia for some input.
Hello. Hopefully. And I think as you noticed, you probably noticed another G district on there that kind of outperformed us, which was Galena Park. And so I just want to kind of give a little framework, a landscape for that. In Galena Park, they have a structure as it relates to instructional coaches where they have K through 2 that concentrates on ELA, K through 2 that concentrates on math, then 3-5 concentrates on ELA, and 3-5 that concentrates on math. So if you know, for reading in K through 2, they are learning to read, and 3-5, they're reading to learn. And so having those coaches separated like that, that means that they have a smaller scope of students or teachers to work with instead of, in our model, we have K through 5 math and we have K through 5 ELA. Some campuses, a couple of our comprehensive campuses, we have 3, but most of it is that broad scope. And so that allows the instructional specialists to have more focus on K5 instead of having it broken down K2, 3, 5.
And then most of you know the assistant superintendent for C&I used to also be here, and I called and talked to her as well. And they have a very, very big emphasis on their early childhood and making sure that they're working to get those kids up. So one of the things that we are seeing an anomaly is that our secondary scores are really outperforming our elementary. And so we have a real focus on our elementary. That's where I think our biggest gaps are. So we do have a plan. We're going to talk to you a little bit more about that. But to go on, this is the same slide that you saw, and it's our college and career and military readiness. And what this is it shows you Goose Creek was sitting at 84, and this is the class, remember it runs back, so this is the class of 21-22. And those children were at an 84.6% versus the region center at 66 and the state at 70. So you can see that our focus on making sure these kids have the skills that they need to when they graduate, we're doing a really good job there. If you look at the career, the next chart, you'll see the career and you'll see the college, and you'll think, wait a minute, 49 and 62 is more than 100. It's because some of the kids overlapped and qualified in both college or career. So I'm going to clarify what makes the difference there, but the light pink is the ones that were college ready, and the dark is the ones that are career ready. And you'll see that in both areas, in college and career, we outperformed the region and the state. So what does that mean to be college or career ready? So to get your CCMR point, it's very important that the students take and pass the TSIA or qualify through their SAT or ACT. They either take a dual credit course, and there's criteria for those courses, and they make a 3 or better in their AP exams, earn an associate's degree, or qualify for an on-ramps course. That's how you meet the college ready. Career ready on the green part is they can earn an IBC, an industry-based certification, complete, for our students that are on an IEP, they complete the workforce readiness, and we've created courses that address the workforce readiness skills so we can ensure that we get that criteria met. And then or they graduate on an advanced degree plan if they receive special ed services, or they earn a level 1 or 2 certificate from a higher education agency, and that's the area that we really, really focus on. So at this point, military readiness, they are coming in saying that they're going to get the Office of Defense form, but it has to be filled out, but they're at least bringing that back into play. So I think we'll be able to pick up military for this 24 year. So that's how you get your CCMR point, but that does not answer the question about how do we get bonus money. And right now, money is very important, and we want all the bonus money we can get. So in order to get the bonus money, it's very different criteria. They have to either pass the TSI or the SAT, which is what we focus on, and enroll immediately after their end of their senior year into a higher ed institute, or earn that associate's degree, which is really what we are focusing on, because we can control that associate's degree, but we really sometimes can't control. We are tracking those kids to ensure they're enrolling in a higher ed institute after they graduate high school. The other component is the career ready for outcome bonus, and that also is they have to meet the TSA or the SAT criteria and earn either an IBC or a level 1 or 2 cert from a higher ed. So those are the way we receive money, and then even that, it's not that simple. They have a threshold that you have to hit. So if I am low socioeconomic, I don't get any money as a school district until I hit after the 11%. So the first 11% of those students you don't earn money for. And if you're non-low SES, I think it is 23%, 24%. So they make it a little harder for you to get those outcome bonus money. Any question on that? Okay. So that brings us to our SAT. I believe there was some concern on the ACT, so I want to address that. SAT is what we focus on in Goose Creek. It's what all of our kids take. It's what we pay for. This is what we hang our hat on. In Goose Creek, we had our average score is a 1057, where the region is 1,000 and the state is 1,001. I think since we're about 78% disadvantaged, the fact that we are outperforming the region and the state is a huge toot your own horn. There was some concern, I think, from the board on the SAT scores. We don't do that here, and so we actually went in and dove through that data, and it's 33 students that took that test. They're students that took it on their own. So those scores really aren't a valid look for us. Any question for that? Okay. So we know that what we just heard, and we heard from our counterparts, is we really have to make sure that we're focusing on those foundation skills at an early level so that we can close that achievement gap before it started. So to let you know where we are, this is the overall pre-K data, and it's what you'll see is this is a slide, and you're going to get the MOI. You saw a little bit of this earlier. Is the FB means they went through the Feel and Brains curriculum program in pre-K, and these are current kinder kids. So we're tracking to see how they're performing over the students that did not attend. Of the students that did not attend, 40% of those kids did not qualify to attend. So they are not free or reduced lunch or meet that criteria. So you'll see in overall literacy, math, letter naming, sounds, blending, listening comp, spelling, they outperformed the students that came from non-poverty, which is huge for us, except in the area of vocabulary, and they were within a couple of percent of the other students, which I think is closing the academic vocabulary gap that we see. Most kids come in that are, even if they'd been in our pre-K program, are usually performing at a lower level. So it was really amazing to see this at the beginning of the year. But what does it mean at the middle of the year? So we tested the students at the middle of the year. You'll see it's not in the same setup because that circle tests differently, or TEXSKIA differently. But once again, they test in math, decoding, blending, letter naming, letter sounds, spelling, and vocabulary. You'll see the exact same test that they test at the EOY for this. And once again, what we see is our students that attended pre-K with us are still outperforming our non-low SES kids across the board, with the exception, again, of vocabulary, which is just a very minimal few points away. So that, to me, says that we as a district and you as a school board have invested in the right programs to ensure our kids are on level playing ground. Any question over that? Well, usually they're about 20% lower because they're missing that. So I think the fact that they're within a few points is making tremendous difference, because I think it's a lot about the kid that you have at home, you're reading to and you're talking to, and these kids were doing it now here. So I'm excited about that. I'll take a win on that. Yes. So 51.06 are on track. Okay. Vocabulary there, 50. Kinder. Only on that. Mm-hmm. Well, the problem is that usually that was significantly lower, and now not only are they learning the words, but they're learning how to, the names, the letter sounds, the blending, so the entire instructional piece is on. Okay. I can help you. Okay, I'm going to turn it over to Dr. Akers.
Yes, I just wanted to spend a few moments talking about NWEA MAPS assessment that we have begun. You may have heard of it in relation to the teacher incentive allotment. This is a nationally normed test that TEA has approved. And in Region 4, there are only 14 entities that have been fully approved for teacher incentive allotment. 2 of those are school districts and the remainder are charter schools. And we are one of those school districts. So that's very exciting. But what we found, what Livia and I have really found this year in working with the NWEA, because it's a universal screener and because it's TEKS aligned, it helps us to identify for every single student exactly where they are by TEK in their learning. So we're able to see exactly what the student can do on their own and what they're ready to do with teacher assistance. And so this has been instrumental in helping us prepare our students and to help them grow. So part of this NWEA map is how it is scored. It's called a RIT score. And what that means is that it's an equal interval score, but most importantly, it measures growth over time. So we can see how much a child has grown from first grade all the way through 12th grade. And next year, we're hoping to add kindergarten to that as well, so that we can track that over the entire career of the student here at GCC ISD. And why is this important? And this is really what we're focusing on. And I want to bring this back to the discussion of how we're rated in accountability. Domain 2 is either how much did your students grow, or how are you performing on STAR relative to districts that look just like you. And so growth is so important, and I love this visual because what it shows us is the young lady in green was working at grade level, and she made growth, and that's what we want all of our students to do. But you have to remember that 26% of our students are emergent bilingual, and 16% receive special education services. And so a lot of our students come in needing some additional scaffolding and tutoring to get them to grade level to start with. So when you look at this and you see the young man in the blue, you can see that although he didn't perform as high as his peer, he made more growth over that year. And that's how we close achievement gaps. And that's really what our focus has been. And so we use that information to teach Tier 1 instruction on grade level at the level of the rigor of the TEAC, but then we're able to use that data from both MAP and our common assessments and our interims to provide the scaffolding and the just-in-time tutoring and instruction that those students need to raise to grade level. And as importantly, we're able to provide enrichment services and experiences for our students who are already working above grade level.
So as we've talked about foundational skills, Susan showed you fueling brains in kindergarten. So now I'm going to talk to you about first grade MOY.
Okay, can we go back to NEWA before we move on?
Mm-hmm.
All right, so what's a universal screener? Define that, please.
It's a screener that we have to administer. The state determines when and how, but it's what we administer to our students to kind of get a baseline of where they are.
Define screener without using the word screener.
Okay. MOY.
Beginning of the year when they assess middle.
It's a test.
Yes.
Okay, use that word. Okay. And universal, I'm old, it's a test. Universal means?
Universal means all students are taking it. It's a nationally norm referenced assessment, and it is different than an assessment in that a student can only get 50% of the questions correct. It will start all students with a grade level question, and if they get that correct, it'll continue to increase in rigor, and then once they start missing it, it'll drop them back down so that it finds that perfect zone of proximal development, right where the student is. This is what I know and can do on my own. This is what I'm ready to learn.
That's the piece I didn't know, and why it gave us that kind of data. Now, you mentioned we use the data. Who is we?
All of our curriculum and instruction team.
And what good does that do a classroom teacher?
It allows us when we have our, when we're planning our scope and sequence, when we're planning our instruction, and when we have our district professional development days, it allows us to provide resources to our teachers. We started something this year that I'm so proud of that I would love for you to come and see. It's called Rare Day. And so after we get data such as this, we create grouping in classrooms where the teacher works with a small group of the students who need the most help with that particular TEAC. The students who were able to complete the TEAC on their own continue with some additional learning, and then those students who mastered it get enrichment activities. So we're really able to personalize and differentiate instruction in the classroom.
Okay, so that's what you're calling scaffolding and differentiation? Okay, according to the teachers, they're giving so many tests that they don't have time to scaffold and differentiate. So why am I hearing that?
Well, that's coming up once I've finished. I'll talk about the assessment and the committee and how we've
and how many times do we do these screeners?
3 times.
3 times.
Per subject?
Yes. Well, no, not for social studies.
And we do that during instructional time.
This isn't a Goose Creek decision. This is TEA. Just want to make sure.
Just getting my facts.
Yeah.
We do this during instructional time.
And this is what allowed our teachers to qualify for teacher incentive allotment.
How many teachers do we have in our school district, Matt? How many teachers?
50 around there.
So less than 10% are going to get teacher incentive allotment. So I'm sorry, that's not as exciting as y'all think it is, not to me. And I understand that the NEWA helps with that, but it's 10%. It's not 100%. But
I will say that
I just know how many tests our kids are taking, and I'm going to quiz you about it every chance I get because it's too stinking much.
Well, I hope we can make you a little happy toward the end of this because that's what we're going to talk about.
Good luck.
But this one, even if it wasn't associated with TEA and the teacher incentive allotment, it's something that we're required to do.
All right. On that note,
What code is that in? Okay, get that to me.
Okay. All right, so I'm going to talk about NWA, and I'm just going to talk about the growth that we've seen with our students. And so if you pay attention to the chart, we have first grade math from the very first year we did it, BOY, MOY, and so in the dark blue is the RIT increase. That means our students grew from BOY to MOY. The percentage that did not grow was 12.9%. But if you go over to 23-24, we increased, our RIT increase was 91.6%, and then we narrowed down the students that did not increase within their RIT, which was 8.4%. Below that, for first grade, we have ELA, pretty much the same standard. We had 84.1% that increased and 15.9% that did not. And then if you look over for first grade ELA, we increased 86.2%, and then we also decreased the number that did not increase by 13.8%. That's first grade, and second grade is pretty much the same. On the top is math. We had 84.2, and then the RIT that did not increase was 15.8. Over the second grade math, we made more growth. We had 88%, and then 12 that did not. Second grade, we had 78.4. Looking over to 23-24, we increased 81.9%.
What constitutes an increase? One more question right, one more level right?
So remember, the test is adaptable.
Yeah, so what constitutes an increase?
Well, it increased because, like I said, it is adaptable, and then it's how the students perform. So when we looked at the data that we pulled for you all, is where the students, we had, and I can't remember the group, but we had students that increased, grew from their RIT score. So, it's usually, 50%. And so we want them to be higher than that. So that's what those numbers in the dark blue represent.
So they went from 50 to 51?
No, that's the percentage of students. The 84.2 is the percentage of students that their RIT scores increased.
Can you define increase?
So I would say in old school terms, it's a lot like a Lexile score, when your Lexile scores go up.
Okay, so we changed at least one level.
Yes.
Okay.
So they're looking at gaps.
Thank you. All right. Who owns NWEA?
They are a privately, a research-based company, not-for-profit.
And it's not a subsidiary of Pearson?
Pearson just acquired them.
Amazing.
And HMH acquired, they purchased.
How did I know?
Oh, no, it wasn't Pearson, it was HMH. HMH.
Okay.
It's who owns
Which
them.
is a subsidiary of Pearson?
I'm
don't
not
think
sure.
so.
I don't think so. I think HMH stands alone.
Yeah, no, I don't think they're different.
All right, so assessment. So what we have been very responsive to teachers and the amount of assessments that they are given. And so I guess I just really want us to keep in mind that we have to assess students so that we know and teachers can make instructional decisions as to what their students know, as to pulling small groups. So we did establish an assessment committee that took place February the 26th, and listed are the people or individuals and teachers that were on the committee. The focus of the committee was to make sure that we continue to focus on those instructional minutes for all of our core subjects. And the other focus was to limit or reduce the number of assessments without compromising the importance of assessing for learning. So we had a committee. We brought them in. We had 4 core, our associate directors in on the meeting as well. And so we kind of laid out the current status of assessments, how they look. So then we got input from the individuals on the assessment committee on assessments that we probably could merge together. And remember, if we keep merging more of our assessments together, then it turns into a benchmark. And so then you're giving more content at the end instead of breaking it up into increments. So we went through all of that with the assessment committee, and so we came up with a happy medium. And so they got a chance to take what we created back to their campus, and those teachers and the principals got feedback from their campus. We had principals on the committee, and those principals sent out what we created to all of the principals in the elementary campuses, and we got their feedback. So we are meeting again in April to kind of discuss all the feedback from the principals, from the teachers, from all those campuses, and then we'll meet again in May to calendar out the assessments. So we took quite a number of assessments off the table. We were able to merge where it made sense to merge, and we were able to take some of the CUAs that happened at the end. We were able to take those off of the assessment calendar.
We also might want to add to this. We also gave them in the middle of a testing season right now. That's not a requirement, so we gave the assessments back to the campuses and made them optional for the rest of this year. To lighten that load.
Yes, we gave them back to the campus and told them that if they wanted to give it as a teacher because they needed that information to inform their instruction, they could do so. Or if they wanted to take each of the test questions and use it as a formative assessment on a daily basis, then they could do that as well.
So our last slide is, to me, it is a celebration. We do have $1.5 million that's awarded to 161 designated teachers. Much to what you said, Mr. Clem, we want more teachers. So that will be expanded for next year. And we hear that TEA may lighten some of that regulation up on how you qualify. So without saying a whole lot in public, I would like to say that I have high hopes for this being open to way more people being able to qualify.
And I would really like to celebrate the fact that the teachers who are receiving this year are teachers who took our most struggling students and closed the most achievement gaps. These are the teachers that, through the growth, were able to do that. So I think that, too, is a celebration.
Questions? I hope that from somebody who wasn't here, we were able to provide the information that you were looking for.
So I just wanted to comment on Mr. Clem's comment about it's only 10% of the teachers that qualify for what happened to the screen. The concept behind that was, I know that Brooke and Matt and the team spent a couple years developing this, was that school districts that were not getting their plan approved were going for too much. They were trying to qualify 40% of all teachers on the first try, and their applications were being denied and sent back. So they really worked on this plan, and yes, it is only 10%, but the hope with an approved plan in place is that we'll be able to add 10% per year. And in a few years, we'll have half of teachers in the teacher incentive allotment. So, and the good news is that money comes from the state to support Goose Creek, not out of our general budget.
So I got a question. So I hear my colleague over here saying that people are complaining about taking too many tests or giving too many tests. Is that required by the state, or is it our policy as GCCISD to do?
So what is required that we give that has been hard is our BOI, MOI, and EOI, beginning, middle, and end of the year assessments. Right. That's required. And then also all the STAR assessments. In the meantime, we still have to see how you're performing on a unit so we can adjust instruction. So that's when you add the required test on top of the other tests that we're trying to assess, it's overwhelming. And so one of the things that I think is the problem is we didn't sit down with the boots on the ground and say, let's look at the calendar and see how they're laid out, because the state pushed back all the state assessments to April this year. So if we're throwing in our own local assessments, that's too much, which is why we gave it back. So we've got a good committee now to say, okay, what do we have to have? Kind of what we're doing with the budget. What do you have to have and what's nice to have? And that's what we're looking at.
How else would you get there and without tests? I mean, without knowing, like what he asked, how do we know they increased or decreased?
But for an example,
through the test.
So, Mr. Renteria, I don't think we have to assess first grade in social studies. Social studies could be a passage and some things that are combined in with the ELA. So those are the kind of adjustments that we're making. If we can adjust that, then that's what we're trying to do.
Well, that was my next question is, how did vocabulary and social studies fall through the cracks? because it seems like we're not.
So you're talking about the early childhood vocabulary sense. To me, it didn't. I always tell Dr. Brown this, but the fact that our kids who are coming from low socioeconomic households are performing within a couple of points in vocabulary is huge. Before, they were about 20% below, which means the experiences that we're providing those kids are working, and they outperform them in every other area. So I've never seen in my career where our low socioeconomic kids are outperforming our regular kids, which it was an aha for me. I was actually talking to Helen Timms about this. We assume just because our kids are coming from income level that doesn't meet that threshold that they're getting those experiences. Not necessarily. I may make good wages and work shift work, but it doesn't mean just because I meet that criteria, I'm able to take my kid on those same adventures. So, I mean, if it was up to us, we would like to have every one of those kids in pre-K and start them as soon as we could.
And on that vocabulary for kindergarten, it's untimed, and they show them pictures. And so it could be a picture of a slide, a firefighter, a building. That's how the vocabulary is tested for kindergarten.
I was curious. Didn't know if they were mandated, what.
Well, Harvard research says, as you're talking to about vocabulary, a student from low SES has heard 30 million fewer words by the time they get to kindergarten. So that's the gap that's being closed, and to be within 1 percentage point of students that are not low SES is pretty phenomenal. Especially, I think if we could go backwards and track some of that data, like you said, a 20% gap has now turned into a 1% gap.
Yeah, in listening, I didn't see how we would know whether they were progressing or not without tests.
You do have to assess.
Who's to say how much testing is too much testing?
Well, I think the point was if there's testing taken away from the daily instruction, right. And if it becomes imposing on a 6-week unit, right. And a 9 weeks unit, whenever it's imposing on those things where they can't cover the material in a period of time, that's when the breakover point is. So it is up to the team to meet with boots on the ground and find out where that threshold is.
Can I ask a quick question? Social studies. Why are we so? Is that social studies is part of history and all of that?
It's we actually performed pretty highly at the 11th grade U.S. history, but the 8th grade social studies test across the state is one of the hardest tests to pass. It's like 49 different TEKs, and it's U.S., almost like U.S. history. So they're taking all of these things like Texas history, things prior to the 8th grade, and they're not getting the background. So we've worked on coming up with a plan in place to work with those teachers. But 8th grade U.S. history, even from the time I was a principal at Baytown Junior, has been a struggle.
Can I just tell you, as a former elementary school teacher, so the first time they're assessed in social studies is 8th grade. And they're tested on the TEKs that they were supposed to have been taught from like kindergarten. But if you're teaching those grade levels and you're not being assessed on social studies and you need more time to teach reading or you need more time to teach math, guess which subject area is going to get the boot? Is there kind of get the shaft? So that's kind of, I think, where that comes from.
Instead of a 5-day instruction, we need a 6-day. People be talking about we need to go to 4 days. Okay. Just saying.
Yeah, but what Ms. Guy said is exactly what we're dealing with. And so, that was one of the things they wanted to take away more of those history assessments. So we can't take them away at junior high because we've got to try to get them ready.
I don't see how you would
know. Social studies, history is kind of obsolete in education.
It's not obsolete. It's just not assessed by the state until the 8th grade and the 11th grade, and that's the only time it's assessed.
So what about the teaching aspect of history?
So we still have them teaching their history courses, especially when it hits the junior high, but they're still teaching those, but we have to have some assessments in the upper elementary grades and the junior high grades to ensure that they're teaching the components that they need to teach.
But there's no accountability. And
not at the state level.
Then it's not so much of a priority, if you ask me. And if the other tests and subjects are being held accountable, well, of course, they're going to lean the other way.
And I'll say at a national level, that's also a concern because the NWEA product that we use, they don't have history. And they're not made for just Texas. There's not even options. So when we talk about adding teachers to TA, that's been a problem for us because it's not even part of the screener package that you can buy.
Amazing.
You know, my deal is, like, when we compare to other schools, I'm really not worried about the other schools. Just show me what the state, academics shows and
But we're
how
not
we compare to them.
But we're not compared to them. That's not how we get our letter grade. Because if you're going to compare us to a school that's demographically at 20% low SES, they're going to look a lot different than us.
But at the end of the day, when it's all said and done, and people go, "Oh, look, state standards," and look at Goose Creek, it doesn't matter. They're not going to go, "Oh, well, that's okay because they're a little bit larger than the." They're not going to say that. They're going to go, "Well, why are we underperforming?"
What you need to respond is we're outperforming the state by leaps and bounds and getting our students to graduate.
I'm just letting you know
but that's
that
the
they're
truth.
not going to ask that. They're not going to go, "Hey, they're, a larger school district," or like just like they can compare us with Barbers Hill. Well, Barbers Hill, they're doing great. They're doing all this. Well, and people go, "Well, you can't compare us." But it doesn't matter what you say. They're going to compare you anyway because,
I understand.
It's the way it is. And when state standards come out and we're not at state standards, they're like, "Well, why aren't we performing?" Even though we made it 89. And then this other guy that was trying to reassess the assessment and do it a different way, really threw that wrench in there. It really caused problems. So, see, at the end of the day, what was it? We were, according to everybody, we were underperforming. It's the way they see it in the big picture. So,
well, I hope we gave you a little bit more to look at.
Right. Well, and I look at, man, Pasadena BS? That it's like, whoa. That kind of like threw me for a loop. All these, because I know when I travel through there what I see. I'm like, whoa, big time. But just some thoughts as y'all were talking, and I was seeing these things.
Thank y'all very much. Good presentation. Budget Reduction Plan Board Workshop number 2.
All right, good evening, President Guy, Dr. O'Brien, trustees. This is our second board workshop for budget planning for 24-25. I know you all are very excited to be here to talk about the budget. It's everyone's favorite topic this year at every school district across the state.
We're fixing to have to get serious. Just saying. Questions are coming.
Yes, I feel it. So we are going to jump right in, and we're going to recap the 320 workshop that we had just a couple of weeks ago. We are going to present the budget reduction plan for board consideration as an action item after we talk about this evening's budget reduction, and the next steps are coming after that.
Is this just a recap, or you're going to, that's going to lead us into, or is that our discussion?
We will have a recap, and then we'll talk more in detail about the reduction. And then
the tiers?
Yes, sir.
Okay.
Yes, sir. And then we'll ask you all to approve an action item.
Okay.
All right, so this slide is a repetition slide, but we wanted to revisit it again just to clarify and maybe expand upon a couple of more of these things here. Firstly, we all know that the legislature did not come through for public education this past session. They had a $32 billion surplus They gave us no additional funding. We had the basic allotment remain the same, which would need $1,000 increase in basic allotment just to keep up with the inflation that we've experienced since 2019. We know ESSER has been exhausted. We know we've had costs such as property insurance and other things that have increased. Then we have underfunded and unfunded mandates. Just to expand on one of those items, such as safety and security, we have about a $4.2 million budget for police and security. And in 2023, they allotted us $213,000 total for safety and security. And in 2024, we're expecting to get $697,000. And our budget for PD right now is $4.2 million. So that equates to about $20 a student. So not even close to where we need to be with safety and security funding. We would hope that they would revisit this again in the next session. But again, not close to where we need to be. And then with all the safety requirements being handed down by the state as well, fencing and that sort of thing, we're going to be, underfunded again.
Well, Governor Abbott is trying to implement these different schools, and things is why they're not allotting more money, like choice and charters and these other schools. And I think, and there's a reason why I'm saying this, that we better not keep our hopes or hold our breath that they're going to be giving us more money is where I'm going with this. Because I don't think that that's, they're not going to, like we're talking about it right now, they're not off session going, oh, well, let's think about this. Let's consider whether we're going to give public education more funding because of inflation. They're not going to say, they're not saying that. So if we're sitting here going, well, maybe they will, just like the ESSER funds, I don't think so. So, just like I made a comment about the ESSER funds, we shouldn't base our budget on ESSER funds. I'm telling you, I don't think that it's not happening. And so just for consideration and food for thought, we probably not need to be hoping and holding our breath that they are.
I agree wholeheartedly.
So,
we'll pray for the best.
In our decisions that we're making, we need to make our decisions with what we have.
That's exactly what we're doing. We are preparing for the reality.
So this glide method thing, we need to maybe not glide so much, is what I'm saying, I guess, because we're building this deficit and, our reserves are plentiful.
Yeah, everyone in the state is experiencing the same thing. We built our reserves during the liquidity that we received during the ESSER era, and now those funds are no longer coming our way. But we did do that, and we were going to dip below $100 million in fund balance before ESSER came in, and now we're just now with this fiscal year ending, we're gonna be right about where we were. So we did exactly what we should have done, and we planned and we were conservative. But now, just like everyone else, we're having to tighten the belt.
I get it.
Yeah.
And I just wanted to inject that thought as we go forward with this. Sorry.
Absolutely. I agree with you 100%, sir. And then, of course, we've got, additional student ed, special ed counts going up, teacher and other staffing shortages driving up wages. And then we've had several new facilities coming online, such as Lyles, Pumphrey, San Jacinto, E.F. Green, and Robotics Center, and so forth. So a lot of things, a lot of exciting things that we're doing as a district, but, they're also, they also cost money, and we haven't received additional funding since 2019. So I'll move on to the next slide here, and I will turn it over to Dr. Bollinger.
Okay, so this is a slide that we've presented before, but just as a real quick recap that we've had a team work with the district committee to receive input, ideas, and strategies to address the budget deficit. We have also reviewed reports that identified areas where we're overstaffed or have identified positions that have been added within the last 3 or 4 years that we can consider for reducing back to where we were staffing before COVID. Our focus has been long-term sustainability, and so the key is to make adjustments, kind of what was just said, make adjustments so that they're sustainable cuts, so that once we make those adjustments, they stay within the budget, and that allows us for more flexibility down the road. Due to the deficit, as we shared at the workshop, the reductions are pretty dramatic, just because we're having to hit a number that's pretty lofty, and so you see that in the proposal. Okay, sorry about that. So we presented this at the workshop, that there's 3 tiers that we're recommending. So as a reminder, Tier 1 is the largest of the 3 tiers with the biggest reductions, and it's also the most sustainable out of the 3, meaning that a lot of it's tied to specific staffing positions. By reducing certain staffing positions, that allows the operational budget over time to stay lower than it was before. That also provides some flexibility with the board over time to adjust compensation or provide raises. And so that Tier 1 has several positions, over 170 positions that we're looking at repurposing or reassigning for that nature. Tier 2 was added as a reminder to further reductions to get to the $28 million that was proposed, and included adjustments to our library services and our technology services, as well as consolidating elementary schools based off of lower enrollment percentages. We'll talk about Tier 2 in a little more depth on the next slide. And then the 3rd tier was a one-time revenue source from Chapter 313 and also our Forward and Trade Zone revenues that were applied in one time. And Ms. Clark's going to talk a little bit more in depth about what that would look like next year with this one-time application to help offset the budget deficit. So we'll come back to Tier 3. Our takeaways from our March 20th, and we felt like that was a very productive meeting. We felt like it was really good dialogue. We received good input and direction from the board, so we want to thank you for that. Our takeaways were to make some adjustments to the budget reduction plan. Those adjustments include removing the walk zones from consideration, and so that dropped the transportation estimate a little bit. We also took away that Tier 2 needs to be removed or delayed for now, and then based off of some rezoning studies and some further conversation, we can plan for possible school consolidation all through next year and make those decisions effective the following school year. We also took away that we need to take a deeper dive into contracted services, and so we've had conversations on specifically around professional development and contracted services, and so we've had several conversations, even one this morning with Executive Council, looking at specifically that dollar amount and making sure that we're being efficient with the staff that we currently have in place. And then we also were encouraged to have to search for additional reductions as well. And so those are some of the adjustments that we'll continue to make as we strive to reduce the budget. This is a recap of Tier 1 reductions, and so I'm not going to read each item one by one. We spent a lot of time on March 20th talking about each item, but the dollar amount for Tier 1 and making adjustments to certain programs and to certain staffings is around 13.4, close to 13.5 million. And so that's what we're looking at for Tier 1. Like we said, Tier 2 we're taking off the table, or at least that's what we heard for now, take Tier 2 off the table. And then for Tier 3, that dollar amount's around 11.7, and I think Ms. Clark wants to talk a little bit more about this piece.
Thank you, Dr. Bollinger. Yes, this is a recap of Tier 3. Again, this is one-time revenue. These revenues are related to Chapter 313 and Foreign Trade Zone revenues that we receive. We receive Foreign Trade Zone revenues every year, but it's very, very different, and it can fluctuate quite volatilely on how much it would be. This year we got a huge FTZ revenue amount, around $6 million, and that does not normally happen. It's contingent upon the inventory in stock on December 31st of the year. So it usually runs like in the $500,000, $600,000, $700,000 range. But this year, for some reason, there was a lot of activity, and we got a huge windfall in that area. So also the 313 revenue, not other districts do not receive, this generally. Only I think about a quarter of school districts have significant Chapter 313 revenue streams. We are one of them. We did receive about $5.7 million, and we would like to take these one-time revenue sources that we did receive and divert those to general fund to help, slow the fiscal cliff, if you will, and make it a little bit more of a soft landing. And, we just can't overestimate how fortunate we are to have this, because a lot of other school districts having to make super severe cuts right now because they don't have the luxury of having such a revenue stream that they can divert. The downside is that it's not a permanent revenue stream, right? It's not like basic allotment that's going to come every single year. We're going to be able to depend on that.
But the question, Bridget, would be this 11.7, we'd have to repay it back to these funds, right?
We don't
These
have
budgets?
to pay it back. No, sir,
No,
we don't.
We're going to borrow it for a little bit and then put it back?
No, sir. It's
Okay.
a separate fund, but we don't have to pay that back. It's just a one-time source. You can think of it like, say you have a mortgage. Say you have
No, I get it.
a mortgage.
If we don't got to pay it back, I'm good
it's like
with it.
it's kind of like a commission
Right,
instead
okay.
of a base salary, right?
Okay.
Base
Yeah.
salary is like basic allotment, but our commission was great this year, and we got 11.7 million, and we were.
You resolved my concern. I'm good
Yes.
with that.
Got it?
Yeah,
All
I'm
right.
good with that. I just thought we were going to have to like we took out of this budget or this fund, and we're going to have to put it back in next year, but we're going to use it this year.
But what you're saying is it has some validity to it in that we will have to make up the money because it's not a permanent revenue
With
source,
this. Okay,
right?
so see,
Yes, you see,
So
I
we
mean, we don't
just
have to
borrow
pay
the
it
money,
back, but we're gonna. Well, there's another slide that's gonna get into that a little bit more to illustrate a little bit better. Here, exactly, we're gonna have to find that money because it's not gonna come back to us. You see what I'm saying? But some of it will. I mean,
that was my concern.
yeah, some of it will, but we don't know how much, especially with foreign trade zone. It could go back to 500,000-600,000. It's not a guarantee. It could be zero.
Right.
I've seen it be zero at some districts I've worked for.
Again, with the logic that I was using, there's no way we could plan our budget with these funds because we don't know for sure whether
we're kicking this can down the road is what we're doing. We're kicking it down the road. So let's look at it a different way. If we do not allocate the 11.7 million, where does it go and what does it do? I think that'll help.
If we did not, we would have to go find $11.7 million additional cuts right now.
No, but what is it? Where does the 11 million go? What are we going to do with it if it's not allocated here?
Capital improvement.
Yeah, it goes into capital improvement fund, yes.
So those are our two options, capital improvement or soften the blow and kick it down the road and get ready to deal with 11.7 again next year.
Right. And we'll go, there'll be some scenarios here in this next slide that'll probably explain it a little bit better as well. So just because I know it's confusing.
But those funds are currently ours and they are in this budget. Right.
They are ours.
So
we have the funds.
And just for clarification, a little history is these funds previously went straight to fund balance. And about 5 or 6 years ago, we designated all these particular funds to go to capital improvement so that the administration would not have to come to the board for a budget amendment to handle a capital improvement, a major capital improvement. So it just funnels straight to capital improvement, giving us some funding to address building needs.
Exactly.
That's the history behind it.
Right. And it is best practice to move these because they are one-time funds. It would mask, your operating budget deficit or surplus because whenever these funds are exhausted and these abatement agreements expire, it could mask it could put you in a major deficit situation, and you will have been masking it for 10 years until those abatement agreements expire. So it is best practices to keep those funds separate in another fund. So that's why we do that.
But it's separate in the capital improvement fund.
Right.
Which is not, we're using them.
Well, it's simply a designation of the funds.
Right.
Yes.
Yeah, but once we put them in there, they're forgotten, and we forgotten to the point where okay, we're just going to use it for capital improvement.
Oh, we don't forget them.
No. That's a lot of money.
It is.
It's what I'm saying.
It can be, yes.
So
this
here's
year
my deal.
A lot.
It's with accountability.
Yes, sir.
So when it goes to capital improvement, there's no accountability with the trustees or having a say-so in how we spend that money.
Oh, absolutely, there is.
We have to bring
Every project comes to you for approval.
even capital improvement money, you can't use it without a vote?
Yes, sir. Any contract has to come to the board for approval. Yes, sir.
Okay.
It's just housed different.
This allotment, Randy said in the past, has been funneled to the capital improvement, to the balance.
Yes, sir. To capital improvement fund. Yes, sir.
Wait, that's not what I heard him say.
So it previously went straight to the general fund balance.
Yes.
Now it goes to the capital improvement. It still has to come to the board to be spent either way. Whether it's a budget amendment moving it from the savings account to the operating, or whether it's from the capital improvement to the operating, either way, it has to come to the board for approval.
Yes, sir. Any transfer, any movement of money between funds has to have board approval.
I get it. My deal is when you're dealing with that kind of money, it's kind of a slippery slope. Let's just slide it over here. Let's do. I've seen entities where they move money around like that to the general fund, and you know how people go, oh, we don't have money to do this, but all of a sudden here's $1 million. Where did that come from? You see, that was my concern, and that's what I'm saying, because I saw it a lot in the city.
I can understand that position, but everything we do is transparent, and but I do understand your concern with shuffling money around. It was a protocol put into place as a recommendation of best practices by, was it TASB or GASSB? Do you remember, Leanna?
I don't remember exactly which.
Ms. Grimes is the one who brought this before us and presented it.
2019, we brought the resolution to move it over to capital improvement and not include it in our general operating budget. And also, as far yes, the resolution was approved by the board. And also, as far as transparency, with the financial update reports that go out quarterly, CIP is included in there so that you all are aware of the spending and the budget that's housed in that account.
And then any contracts over $50,000 always come here too. So
we are discussing funds and budgets, and we're going to discuss
appropriately so.
Right.
Absolutely. And it is a little bit confusing, so I'm glad we had this dialogue so everybody can understand a little bit better. All right, so just to show the running total, and this you'll see this again in the action item. This is the action item that will actually be approved or be considered for approval later on in the meeting. But this first half here is just a reiteration of the last time we met, talking about that $28.359 million deficit and the reductions needed to balance the budget and offer a general pay increase of the of the 3%, and the 3% pay increase a general pay increase is about $6.5 million. So then you have to take the Tier 1 reductions, and those are permanent, right? That's the 3.468 that Dr. Bollinger talked about, mainly staffing, and then some other items as well, but mainly staffing. And then the Tier 3, because what we heard was you all did not want to pursue Tier 2.
No, that wasn't correct.
For this year?
No, it was just a temporary hold to find out some numbers or some information that we needed. That's what it was never.
For Tier 2?
Yeah. And I even mentioned it to Matt that day, right then and there, that this ain't to be removed. This is just a temporary situation until we find out some information.
Yeah, our takeaway was that that decision was delayed for this budget.
Yeah.
No, as I understood it, it was to be removed. That's what the recommendation was made, yes.
We talked about it. I brought it up specifically to Matt.
So what I heard was that it was to be removed for this year, but we'll continue the conversation through next year as we look at school consolidation to implement at the end of next year.
Right. I think I spoke on that one more, that I thought it was a little premature to start closing schools without demographic studies and looking forward. So it was removed from consideration for this budget year, but we're going to move forward and look at it, and I think there's an action item on here that kind of looks towards helping with that.
That's correct. The action item that will lend towards a demographic study, we'll talk a little bit more about that later.
Yes, sir. So then we move to the Tier 3 reductions that we just talked about, Chapter 313, the $5.7 million, and then the Forward Trade Zone reduction of $6 million, and that brings us to a shortage to the budget shortage of $3.1 million, which would have to come from general fund balance, further reductions, or a legislative increase for basic allotment for next year.
Well, can we back up a little bit? Now, we haven't discussed this, but I mean, we're discussing the budget, and it probably needs to be discussed, and it's probably something nobody's going to want to bring up. But the $3 million, and we have an increase for 3% at 6.5. So here's my question, and we've never discussed it. But have y'all, or did your committee or whoever discuss a pay freeze?
Compensation, we're just talking about expense reductions this time around, but compensation we'll start getting into heavily when we have our next workshop. So that, all that can be definitely discussed in detail at that time, because we're going to have you all review. We'll have our TASB study in by then, and we'll have more definitive numbers, so we'll be able to discuss all the compensation
And just for
possibilities.
clarification, the TASB study is the one that compares us to all other schools in the region.
Yes, sir. So that'll be the focus of the next workshop.
But I think that's a good point, because the board's not approving that pay increase. She's just using that as a placeholder.
It's just a
and
placeholder.
then in May, we'll have different options where 0% raise, 2% raise, 3% raise, and what those dollar amounts will look like. And then in May, we'll go back and have an action item where you'll look at the compensation package. And that'll be treated separately. I think just for this purpose, we're using that as a placeholder to show.
Just so you didn't get shocked whenever the TASB study does come in, and then we're like, oh, now we're another $6 million or whatever it is that you all would like to proceed with. So we wanted to go ahead and put it there so we could build it in ahead of time.
Because again, our economic situation, it's not guaranteed that it's going to be better. People are hoping in November that things change, but there's no guarantee. And with all them, which again, I call it a recession that we're in. I don't think it's going to get any better unless some drastic changes come. So I again don't think that we should base our budget on hopes and dreams and wishes, and if we have to do certain drastic things to balance our budget, it's not going to be on hoping and wishing for November changes. So.
Agreed. Dr. Bollinger, if you would, we talked about this a lot during the workshop, and that was attrition versus, we're closing a lot of positions, attrition versus layoffs. If you would, in open meeting now, let's discuss that as part of the plan and put that out there for people that just listened to this, that did not go back and watch or listen to the workshop.
Sure. So we're following, for the positions that we identified, we're following the attrition model, which means that as we have vacancies or as we have resignations or retirements, we've identified certain positions that we're not refilling or rehiring for. And then as we close out those positions, we're looking at certain areas that are deemed as excess staff, and then we're reassigning individuals into those positions that are most essential. So, for example, if we have a certain department that has an administrator and they're losing three administrators within their department, we're not firing those administrators. They're as vacancies open up that are deemed as essential, we're reassigning individuals to that spot. I think the one caveat that's been a little confusing, and I'm going to kind of risk hopefully not messing this up too much, but with some of our teachers that are not certified, they were told at the beginning of the year they'll be hired on for 1 year as adjunct educators at will, and they can pursue their certification. And if they got certified by a certain time,
but they're on contract.
They're not on contract. Yeah, that's a good point, that our adjunct educators are not on contract. And if they were to get certified by a certain time, we'd roll them on to a contract. So we've had several teachers who've had to resign because they haven't hit that mark. But as we have vacancies that open up, we're looking at those individuals. And we went through this process last summer, and we rehired several of our adjunct educators who were making progress towards certification. So it's a little confusing when that's happening at the same time as we're closing out certain positions, but those are not aligned or related, if that makes sense. They're two separate issues. One's due to a teacher shortage, where we just don't have certified teachers to hire. The other one is due to attrition due to budget reductions.
The only reason we would hire an uncertified teacher is because we are a district of innovation, correct?
Correct.
So districts who are not district of innovations don't even have that as an option.
Yeah, so it's in our DOI plan, and so that allows us to have some flexibility when we can't find certified teachers, which most districts are dealing with the same issue that we're dealing with as well.
And my understanding is they have to complete all the requirements within that calendar year or lose the right to be a teacher. Is that correct?
Yes. Do you want to talk a little bit about that? Yeah. Lisa's the expert on it.
Yes, sir. So when we hire the teachers at the beginning of the year, they understand that they might not even be in a program, and we get them on the path to certification. And that process does take quite a bit of time, so we understand that it could take up to a year. And for most of them, they meet the requirements, they pass the test, they get on an intern permanent certificate. But for some of them, they took a test and they couldn't pass it, and they have to wait 30 days before they can take it again. So some of our teachers are right there in that window where they're running out of time for us to make staffing decisions so that we can, fill our classrooms with certified teachers. But we tell them, we're not giving up on you just because you have to resign. If you pass in May and you're eligible, we will bring you back. And so we're having those conversations.
If there's a position.
If there's a position for them, yes, sir. Mm-hmm.
Okay, administration. Elaborate on that with attrition.
Sure. So within if you look at under Tier 1, if you look at the positions that we've identified as excess, then there's about 175, 176 positions that are deemed as excess. And so throughout that, there's multiple administrators who've been identified in that area. And I don't have them exactly counted out, but I can tell you that we paid attention to that because we know that was a comment that was made last year, just to make sure that it's balanced throughout all departments. And I think that most individuals in here could say that each department's getting hit pretty visibly.
Right. And throughout this whole discussion and throughout the school district, I'm going to use a word, uncomfortable. A lot of people are feeling uncomfortable right now, and because we're making tough decisions. And it's up to us. Ultimately, we're going to vote on this thing, and even Randy. I mean, he's a part of this situation too. And I'll bring something up that didn't make him happy, I don't think, but I voted against his raise last time because of this very situation, and this, I want everybody to consider, especially the trustees, when it comes to this point, it's across the board from the top to the bottom, not just certain people, not just teachers, not just personnel that are cleaning or driving buses, but it's everybody. And that's why I voted against that little raise that Randy got or whatever it was, because I felt like, hey, we're in this together. Let's either sink or swim together. And I told Randy, hey, Randy, it's nothing personal with you. It's just we're in this together. And if by attrition we're losing teachers, and by attrition, we're losing administrators, I can't see myself voting for a raise for somebody when the rest of the people are not getting it. Because I believe Randy got his raise when the administration got their little raise, before we made that extra raise for Randy. You see, and this is what I mean by uncomfortable. It's not easy talking about this, and that doesn't make me comfortable to talk about it, especially, probably the only one that would talk about it, but up front and open. So I'm just saying that, this whole situation, and it hadn't got better since the last budget.
Well, it has.
We
have improved, but I didn't vote for your raise either, Mr. Renteria. So,
that's okay. That's okay.
Could I make a point, Dr. Bollinger? You had mentioned, are you done?
Yeah.
Okay. You had mentioned earlier that, just a little bit before this dialogue, that you didn't have exactly those, like what positions and things like that, and as Bridget does too. So we have to really be mindful that we give exact information, because what happens is that we have individuals that go out and use coded language that implies a different than what we're really doing here. So it makes it better for us to have exactly what you're saying to us as far as if we're doing those positions, then give us the exact positions, give us the exact things that are happening, because then we can't defend that because it's been misinformation that's been put out there. So we have that, just like we didn't know about Tier 2 and those things. So we have to be able to have that information directly so we won't have to deal with individuals going out there and speaking in coded language and using it against us in any way, okay?
Yeah, and I'd like to respond to that. We do have exact positions that we've identified, and we've gone through, over the last, I would say, 4 or 5 weeks, we've gone through our staffing projections, and we've had meeting with our campuses and with our district leaders. Our process, now that we've met with all of our schools, is to meet with our department leads, and they will receive information with individuals, and we have a communication process where they'll communicate that this is what's happening, your position's been identified as excess, you're not losing your job, but you may be reassigned. And so we're going through that process over the next week or two where it's identified. We just want to make sure that it's communicated in a very sensitive manner and a professional manner, and we want them to hear it from their immediate supervisor. And so we're working that plan. Like I've shared, we've met with all of our schools. Our principals are meeting with their teachers and their staff, and then our department and district leads are meeting with their people over the next week or two. So we have identified those, and then that communication process is forthcoming. But I do think that whenever we're saying, hey, we're having to reassign 170 positions, it is uncomfortable, and there's a lot of panic and paranoia. But I will also say that as a district, we'll get through this. I feel like we have a very robust plan, and we've gone through something similar before several years ago, and we're making sure that we're taking care of people's employment. And it may not be the job they were actually hired for, but at the same time, we're doing our best to place them in a very similar role that's considered more essential. And so as much as possible, we're trying to communicate that in an effective manner.
In keeping with what Helen said, just, let's put it all on the table, and we know what we're dealing with. No surprises,
But we are using attrition across the board, correct?
Yes.
Thank you. I didn't mean to.
Okay, so this next slide is repetitive. We've already talked about the 3% general pay increase being included, the $11.8 million for Chapter 313 and Forward Trade Zone. And then, of course, before we get into this next slide, the next legislative session launching in January, we would hope that we would receive some type of increase in funding. But again, it is not guaranteed. And to your point, Mr. Renteria, highly uncertain at this point. We just don't know.
And we don't want nobody to go anywhere, especially Randy. I mean, he's been a great superintendent. He's a great superintendent, but hey, it is what it is, We got to talk about it.
That's right. So this slide, I know it's a little busy, but I wanted to put it all, as a good visual for you all to see the side-by-sides and what what scenarios could play out. And there are so many that you can't possibly come up with every single one. But the 24-25, the first column there is the one we just talked about. It's just a carbon copy of everything we just discussed, and it has the bottom line 3.16 deficit, the shortage that we talked about. So when we sit here next year at this time, what 25-26 could look like. Scenario one has those one-time items coming back up here to the top. Now, we're not having to repay them like we talked about earlier, but they are going to come back, and we are going to have to find, either further reductions or additional revenue sources or additional funding from our legislature to offset this. So when we start out next year, it's going to look like about a $14.8 million deficit because of that.
So we all need to be calling our legislators and letting them know, hey, public education is hurting, and we need your help.
Yes.
I think that's a very good point. And actually, Mr. Renteria, on the website, all this information is out there with links to our representatives and verbiage to actually communicate with the representatives. So employees, members of the public, with or without children in the school district, that's something y'all could do as well. and take action that may carry more weight than we can sitting up here behind the table.
Yes, the legislature, they really need to hear from the public. So anybody who can reach out, please do so. Definitely. It's definitely going to be key in this next session. But if you look at this scenario 1 for next year, you've got the $14.8 million deficit that we're starting out with. And then because Commissioner Morath came out and testified in Austin on the Hill and talked about the $350 increase in basic allotment, I kind of just grabbed that one. And that would give us, talking about basic allotment being $61.60, if you would add the $350 to it, that would give us about $7.7 million additional funding.
Thank you for doing your job. Not too many people pay attention to stuff like that. Not even me. I mean, if I hear it, I'll remember. But
yeah,
that's, just.
So I think you were right in saying that nothing's guaranteed. But I think if we're going to have political conversations openly, we can talk fully about it. The intention there, I think, with Commissioner Morath was, if the voucher bill passes, which there's a likelihood it will with the change in elected officials, that he anticipated that the legislator would have to match something for public ed since the voucher bill would likely pass.
Right.
So it's a proposal. This is the least amount, I think. I think in an earlier slide, Bridget presented that it would take $1,000 to bring us even, truthfully. But his modest $350.
An additional $1,000.
Well, total. Where it says $350, it'd be $1,000.
Okay.
Right.
And his modest proposal was, I think, a hint at what he thought would be fair to at least match what the voucher bill will do. The voucher bill was proposed to be more than our per pupil funding for public schools. So anyway, it is somewhat political, and I think it's fair, since you said we're speaking openly and honest here, it is somewhat of a political consideration, but I think that is open conversation that the commissioner's having before the committee, and since he's used that term, I think it's fair to estimate. But to your point, scenario 2, I'll turn it back to you, Bridget. Scenario 2 says what?
Just to finish out scenario 1 really quickly,
yes.
The 7.7 with the $350 increase in basic allotment, and then if you look at the tier 3 reduction, we're slated to receive about $4.2 million next year for Chapter 313 revenue. And then, I'm just putting foreign trade zone revenue back to normal amounts here, and that would put us at about a $2.4 million deficit, and that would not include any raise, but it would, put us in a slight deficit. Alternatively, if the $7.7 million, if they were to be very generous as a legislature and give us half of what it would take to get us, over the 2019 to present inflation factor, and give us $500, it would pretty much wipe out the deficit and put us at a balanced budget. However, if you look at scenario 2 here, you see the same thing, the 313 FTZ and the shortage, the 3.16 shortage, bringing us to the $14.8 million deficit starting out again. And if they gave us 0, like they did this past session, and then we, of course, still received the $4.2 million from 313 and $500 from foreign trade zone, it would bring us to a $10 million deficit. So you see how widely it can swing, and you just cannot look in your crystal ball and be, completely confident that something's going to happen, or if it's not.
Well, here's the way I would suggest that we approach that, in my opinion, but I'm only one person, but you have to go with the worst case scenario and plan your budget like that, because that's where we're at. That's a fact. And like I said, it's political. It's going to be that way. It's not going to,
right.
The voucher and the charter schools and the choice is what I was referring to earlier when I was saying that Governor Abbott was trying to implement these things in the state of Texas, for people. And he's got a lot of pressure on him to do that. So that's why I was making my references to that. Don't bet on it. Don't count on it. Don't hold your breath, because it might not be there. So using the worst case scenario would keep us, where we need to be. Now, if there's something good that comes from all that next year, and there's a change in policy or presidency, and things change, it'll only be better for us. Then we can revert back to maybe, hiring paying more, bonuses, keeping Randy for another 10 years, he's so young, but.
Absolutely. And just to recap, so next year, if they gave us nothing, we'd be facing a $10 million deficit if we diverted the 313 and FTZ funds back to general fund again. So it can swing widely, just depending on what the legislature does.
So in our fund balance, we have $104 million. Is that correct? Is that current?
We're going to dip, by the end of this year, we're going to be right under 100. We're going to dip under 100.
But I meant without dipping into it.
At the end of this fiscal year, June 30th of this year, before we even start next year's budget, we'll dip, because we adopted the $22 million deficit, remember? Right. So, yeah. Okay. But we're still in good shape. I mean, we're not.
Because we only need $60 million to stay.
About almost 70.
Okay.
About 68.
So we'll be at almost 30 million above where we really need to.
I mean, you don't want to get down to the. Don't want to get down to the 68.
And the thing about it is.
Now you're making Bridget nervous.
But we don't. No. Well, these things need to be discussed.
Right. Absolutely. It's important.
It's our budget.
Yeah.
And like I said, it's uncomfortable, and people don't talk about this stuff. Some people, when I was new, people would ask me, man, I don't know. They don't talk about that. So, now that I'm here and I discuss it because, somebody asks me, I'm going to let them know, hey, we're good. We're for now.
Yeah. We have very strong reserves, so that's definitely a positive. Does anyone else have any other questions on this particular slide?
On the FTZ coming in the next year, projecting 500,000, and that's very big. Is that a realistic number, or are we being conservative because we have a lot of warehouses popping up, a lot of inventory going to be sitting here? Can we expect that number to go up a little bit? And can you talk a little bit more how it jumped all the way to 6 million? Did people fall asleep and just not hide the inventory this year? Or?
I have not reached out to the clients to know exactly what happened, but if I had to guess, I would think that they're probably going to be bringing that number down because they don't, if they can possibly bring it down, that is their goal, is to keep it at a minimum.
Right.
But there's really no way to predict it. It's just very, it's not like any finite formula. It's just what happens to be in inventory at 12/31. Did you have a comment, Leanna?
Also, the foreign trade zone is not based on the warehouses that we build around, but those that are on the waterway. Okay. That inventory has to actually be on the waterway at those entities.
Or rail.
Or rail.
I was going to say, is rail included in
at
that?
those entities on 12/31.
It's weird. It's a one-day measurement.
Yep.
Well, yeah.
Like
inventory. Yeah. Working in a refinery, I know some of the refineries that they'll move their inventory out.
Yes.
They do.
During this period.
You better believe it.
And the numbers go down, and then after they do the inventory, they swoop it all back in.
There's a lot of
it's common practice.
And if you look at the rail yards this past year, they did fill up, which may have something to do with that. Whereas in years past, you go by these rail yards and they are empty on December 31st.
Right. They just didn't have anywhere. They must not have had the capacity to move it out of the zone fast enough, and they got charged. So, but that we got a great windfall from it. So, I'm very pleased. Mm-hmm. Any other questions on this slide?
How many more you got?
Not very many.
Okay,
Dr. Bollinger?
Sure. So we wanted to share this just as a recap that our goal is to remain intact some of the awesome programs that we have in the district that make us a premier district. We feel like the early learning academies have been an area of focus, and so we want to make sure, even though we're scaling some of the staffing down in those areas, we want to sustain that over the long term. Our CTE academies, you heard in the previous presentation, our college and career readiness focus has been very strong, and we want to continue to make sure that we're preparing our students for college and career readiness. And so we have that in place. And also, we want to make sure we're staffing our schools at a healthy ratio. It was mentioned at the workshop that several positions were added during the midst of COVID with ESSER funds. And so we're scaling back down we're adjusting to right size that, and so that this is part of that painful process.
Okay, I got a specific question. By state standards, what is the largest number a classroom can have? Because I've had teachers contact me, and I'm curious to know myself. What is that number?
Yeah, I think, and I don't. I think for the for pre-K through fourth grade, that tends to be the strictest staffing ratio to 22 to 1, and so we stick to that ratio, and then at fifth grade we're at 24 to 1, 25 to 1, and so we stick to that ratio, and then you have more flexibility. So
when I hear stories from teachers saying, "I'm already at capacity," and they want to put more students.
It depends on the school. We have several schools that are very close to capacity, where those classrooms are full, and then other schools where they're not. But we're doing our best to adjust those staffing ratios. And then what we also do, because it's on projected numbers. So next year, if there's a school that has more students than we anticipated for whatever reason, if more students move in, or a school has less students, after day 10, we meet with our C&I department, and we go through and we make adjustments, and we don't like to move teachers, but we do that to make sure we get our staffing ratios in check.
Secondary ratios?
Same thing.
30 to 1?
Yeah, it depends. We staff with a 25 to 1 or 27 to 1.
Right, but his question was, what does the state say the maximum is?
Right.
It's 30 to 1, and then either secondary or elementary can have a 10% variable by waiver. But we're doing everything to keep the class counts as small as possible, but we do want to be efficient, especially during budget crunch like this.
Well, I just want to be able to tell people that ask me, hey, the administration is concerned about, your classrooms, and.
Absolutely. And I think it depends on, there's certain classes that have lower ratios or higher ratios, like a welding class, I think has a 6 to 1 or 8 to 1. Just due to the safety concerns. Band, of course, you can have 150 students in one class. So it depends on the class as well. So secondary, there's a little bit more leeway. But I would say on average, our goal is to be between 25 and 29 to 1, depending on the class at the secondary level.
And I know our high school principals are working their master schedule to have the caps in our tested areas to be at 25 to 1, and then our non-tested areas to go up to 27, 28.
Okay.
Okay, so next up.
I do know there's teachers out there going, they're lying.
There are some periods, there will be some periods that are above that, but the counselor should be going in before school starts and balancing across grade levels and across classes and across teachers. But sometimes that one specialty period, there might only be one. For example, an AP course, it might have 32 kids in a class just because it's just one.
And sometimes that balancing is a little bit harder than it sounds.
How do you know? And I'll say that during COVID, when EF Green opened up, the staffing ratios were relaxed. And if you walked at some of the junior schools, there were classrooms that had 14, 15 kids. And so we were overstaffed in many areas. And so we're having to make those adjustments again that are uncomfortable. But we don't want the classes to be overwhelmed. And if a school needs an additional teacher, we look at that and we'll grant that based off the numbers.
Okay, so budget calendar, next meeting is going to be May 6th, and that will be a workshop, and that's when we'll start talking about potential compensation plans. We should have our TASB deliverables and reports ready to prepare the compensation plan for you all to review and get your input, and that will be a workshop format with a start time 5 o'clock, 6 o'clock.
Can we change that start time to 5:30 at the pleasure of the board?
Yeah, I'm good with that because I'm rushing when I'm working. I mean, what, May the 6th you said?
Yes, sir.
May 6th.
Yeah, see, I'm working days, so yeah. Any adjustment later helps me.
Is the board good with moving that to 5:30?
Can't get anything done in 30 minutes. Okay. I'm about to kill myself in this chair.
I'll save you. So yeah, we're at the question period again?
Start time 5:30 for May 6th.
Yeah, that would help me. I mean, I'm good with it, but we need a few more. Helen, I know you're retired. You can do whatever, right?
I can't do 5 o'clock. I would be late. I would be here at 5:30.
I'll try to be here at 5:30.
So 5:30 start time? Is everyone okay with that?
What are we going to get done in 30 minutes?
It's going to be, we're going to probably go into 6 o'clock.
Oh, he's saying.
Just
So
he can't change it because
the start of the board
Because the
meeting
board
would
meeting
be
would be late.
30 minutes later.
6:30.
Did that not happen?
I'm good with that too. I told y'all when y'all changed the board meetings to 6. Why would we start?
As long as
so
we
early?
still get out of here at 7:30, I'm good.
All right. As long as I don't receive a trophy.
Yeah. You know, some of us work for a living.
All right. Any other
We
questions?
can say, I do. What was, Randy, did you ever come up with any, this kind of for y'all too, but you know, the school, what was the school during COVID that y'all had started?
Virtual school.
And there was some discussion about maybe opening up our school to a larger, I guess, audience, if you will.
Do not have a response to that yet.
Okay. So this wouldn't be a part of this budget? Is that what you're saying? Because it was brought up in the budget session, so I'm bringing it back up in the budget hearing. So
I'll have more information.
in other
at the
words,
next meeting.
expanding the virtual school.
Creating a general, well, I think it's fair to bring that up because we're talking about attrition and cuts through attrition. The other way that you can increase revenue is what we talked about, increased per pupil or increased pupils, period. So there are other ways to generate revenue, and virtual would be one of those ways. So I do have someone on it, but I did not prepare that information for this evening's presentation.
Just a question.
We'll have it.
You know, when you talk about revenue and shortages, and I remember the discussion we had. I'm surprised I remember because I drank too much alcohol on Easter and I forgot. I was going to forget, but
And
I
Dr.
didn't
O'Brien,
forget.
on that with the
I
virtual
remember.
school, if we could get information about, is it any other schools in the state of Texas that are doing it? What you're recommending for to expand it?
We'll have all that information for you.
All right,
Yes, ma'am.
thanks.
But I do
Get
think
that,
it's a legit
Mr. Flood.
idea.
Okay. Thank you very much.
Thank you, guys
Thank you.
and ladies. I mean altogether.
Okay, now we are on to action items, number 7. And Dr. O'Brien?
Yes, number 7A is consideration of the 24-25 budget reduction plan as presented. A vote yes would be that the administration is moving in the right direction, presenting the items as previously discussed at the last workshop, and we'll continue to prepare that budget reduction plan for you as we move forward.
Any questions?
Yeah, that's not
comments?
accepting it right now, is it?
So is it, from what I understand, we're approving that they're going to move
Continue
forward on the reductions in
as-
phase 1 and phase
Yes.
3.
Correct.
We're not approving any compensation or anything like that.
That's
Is
correct.
that correct?
Yes.
I was just, the reason I asked was if we're not adopting the whole budget tonight, then why even bring this vote up? Because at the end of the day, when we adopt the whole budget,
Point of order, there's no motion on the floor, so there should be no discussion.
Oh, thank you.
well, she asked if there was any questions, but you're right. Okay.
Sorry. Okay, is there a motion?
I move to approve.
Have a motion by Mr. Glenn, a second by Ms. Barattens. Now, any
Okay, yeah.
questions or comments?
Yeah, with the same questions that we were discussing about that. I mean, at the end of the day, when we adopt the budget as a whole, we would adopt the
That's
whole thing.
correct. This is
Right.
just merely a step in the sequence that administration's on the track as directed by the Board of Trustees.
Administration's asking our guidance toward getting to the budget we're asking them to get to, and this is the method they're going to do it.
Right.
We have consensus as a board to move forward with this plan, but we're not approving anything specifically other than to move forward with this plan as a whole.
I hear that, and that's why we're discussing it, is why I'm curious as to why we're voting to approve what we're already talking about. I mean, the final approval, I understand, but okay, we can do whatever. That's fine. I was just
Any
it's
other
a little
questions?
premature is what I was. It's premature to adopt one section of this or their plans and attempts to reduce the budget when we're going to adopt it when we finish it. But okay.
Any other questions or comments? Oh.
I would just say that it's similar to like we're piecemealing, right, with the compensation plan as well. This is just another section of that. And so in the end, when we come back on June 17th, that's when we'll approve the entire budget in its entirety. And we'll have, this is just one section, just like the compensation plan will be a separate approval. So.
Okay.
It's a valid point, but I think it's just a formality to solidify our direction that we want administration to go. Am I understand that correctly?
Yeah, it's acquiring your support and your approval to move forward.
I get it. I don't think we've ever done that in the past where we had to get our approval to move forward with what we're already discussing is all I'm saying. That's all. But I get it.
When you're having this type of reduction, you really want board approval and guidance, and you'll see that across school districts across the state that are doing it in similar fashion. So
I get it, Bridget. But I ain't worried about nobody else right now. Their budgets are no concern to me. It's this one that we're talking about, and that's why I keep bringing up all the questions and discussions that we're going through right now. Because if it were to some of these people, they would have me shut up and cut my mic off, and that ain't gonna happen. But okay, let's go forward with it.
All in favor, raise your hand.
Yeah.
We have 6-4, 0 against. Motion passes.
Next item is the consideration of consent agenda. B1 is donation from ExxonMobil. 2, resolution for the school district's authorized representative to Techstar Investments. 3, instructional allotment and Texas Essential Knowledge and Skills TEAC certification for 24-25. 4, selection of and contract with USA Shade for the installation of 3 shade canopies for the Be Well Baytown initiative. Number 5, Sweet Southern Sound to provide equipment rental and commencement services at Stallworth Stadium for the 23-24 school year. Number 6, third option to extend competitive seal proposal, CSPs, for the maintenance, building supplies, and materials. Number 7, award of CSP for fencing materials, installation, and related services. Number 8, fourth option to extend our request for proposal RFP for general maintenance, repair, and inspection service. Number 9, tax refunds. And number 10, budget amendments. Administration brings before the consent agenda for board's consideration and approval.
Is there anything that needs to be pulled?
Number 1 and 4.
Make a motion that we accept the consent agenda except for 1 and 4.
Second.
Okay, I have a motion by Mr. Renteria, a second by Mr. Campisi. All in favor, raise your hand. 6-4, 0 against. Motion passes. Okay, number 1.
I have a couple of questions on what's being donated by ExxonMobil. It says we're going to get something like in kind from Khan Academy districts. Is Mr. Warbleski here? Okay. Well, there's two things. It's some kind of text courses and ClassLink.
Okay, so they are offering us, Khan Academy, as you know, is a free resource.
Yes.
But they also have developed more extensive resources within Khan Academy that are paid for. specifically for math and for science. And so Exxon is donating the money for our students to have access to that.
Okay. What does ClassLink have to do with that? Because that's a separate company. We don't already do that? We do it, but not with Khan Academy.
Correct.
Okay, I'm good. Thank you. And then on number 4, about the shades canopies for Be Well Baytown. If I understand, I'm going to go ahead and start while y'all are coming up. If I understand correctly, this is like a pass-through budget item. We're going to pay for it, then somebody's going to reimburse us?
That's correct.
Okay, why do we have to do it that way?
It's a grant, and maybe, I'm not sure if you can explain it a little bit. It's the reimbursable grant through Be Well Baytown initiative.
So we have to do it, then we get the grant.
That is correct. And
Okay,
we'll invoice them, and then they reimburse us.
Okay, cool.
Within the quarter.
Why is there such a discrepancy between the cost and the size between the 3 campuses? Because one's a little over 20, then there's one in the 40s, and there's one a little over $50,000. And there is it. I mean, what?
So when we met with the campuses, we asked what their greatest need was, and they determined where the location of the shade was going to be, and that's how it was determined.
Okay.
So it'd be the size of it.
Did you do that?
Whether or not it's over a playground or whether it's freestanding over a field.
That is correct.
What's the life expectancy of this, and who pays for it when the canopy fails?
I happen to recall it was 10 years, and it would be a district property once it's donated.
But I should be in the home by then.
And obviously for the canopy fabric, there's a less life expectancy, but the structure itself will last longer. It's embedded into the ground. And so.
I put a canopy up that I should not have at my house, and it already failed. So yeah, so that's kind of where. Okay, so the grant comes after we sign off that we delivered, et cetera. So
we've already signed the service agreement with MD Anderson, Be Well Baytown. And so it's already been approved, and the board's already approved it. We're just submitting the invoice to MD Anderson, and then they will reimburse us.
Okay, perfect. Thank you.
Y'all slid that one by us.
Right. Yeah.
But this money comes from capital improvement?
Didn't slide it by me.
It was part of an MOU that was approved by the board.
Yeah, this is ongoing, right?
Correct.
Okay, cool. All right, thank you all very much.
You're welcome. Thank you.
I would approve or make a motion to approve 1 and 4 as presented.
Second.
Go ahead.
Okay, I have a motion by Mr. Clem, a second by Mr. Renteria. Any questions? All in favor, raise your hand. 6-4-0 against, motion passes. Okay, future board agenda items and board training and board meetings. It looks like.
So if we're going to continue to do screeners and CUAs and LMNOP testing, then I'd like to see quarterly reports at a minimum given to the board at board meetings.
Yeah, I think that's fair.
Did you get that, Ms. Jackson?
I'll send it to you in an email.
We have a board training that we need some clarification, Mr. Clem.
It's mandatory.
It's the team of 8.
Unfunded mandatory.
Everyone else can attend April the 16th. 17th.
Put some pressure on me in front of God and everybody.
He'll be there at 5 o'clock.
April the who?
17th, I think.
16th.
Oh, on here it says 16th. I mean, on here it says 17th, so it's different.
I am the president of our HOA, and I have a meeting that night.
It was the 16th, 17th, or 25th is what I sent out to you, everyone. And I
When-
think the 17th was the one with the
When did you
least
send
number.
that out?
I think,
how
no,
was-
you said the 16th.
How was that sent out?
Let me throw you under the bus now.
Yeah, 17th is better.
I'm
for me.
sorry?
Email.
I can do the 17th.
What?
April.
I can do the 17th.
There we go.
Perfect.
Do we have a time?
6 to 9.
You say it's event?
6 to 9.
6 to 9. Thank you.
And I understand if you are well behaved, it could be abbreviated.
I will shut up. How about you?
I'm always quiet. That's why Randy didn't say nothing to me.
Okay, any other future board agenda items or board training?
I don't have a training, but, we have so many acronyms that, I feel like when I go to sleep, I see them. But long time ago, somebody gave me a paper cheat sheet. I'm old school. I like paper. I'm not much on.
I believe we still have that available, Mr. Sampson. We'll get a copy to you. Yes.
Yeah, because you say some acronym, I'm going like, oh. Yeah. Everybody who know all the acronyms, raise your hand. Come on.
I don't think anybody does.
All you got to do is ask.
Yeah. I'm like, hey.
Those two do.
Yeah.
I'm sorry. I had to ask. I mean.
When's the next board meeting?
Tomorrow.
May 6th.
This one's never going to be over.
I'm off. I got all night. I'm good.
Okay. All righty.
If you quit asking questions, Helen, we would get there already.
All right. At this time, the board will recess into closed session pursuant to the following sections of the Texas Open Meetings Act: 551.071, 072, 073, 074, 075, 076, 082, 083, 084, 087. No action will be taken while the board is in closed meeting.
Kendall,
And it
are we cooking?
is 8:39.
When y'all are retired and y'all rushing it. You do have a life. Oh, you do?
Okay, we will reconvene into open session at 9:47. Dr. O'Brien, we are at 7F, consideration of personnel.
Yes, ma'am. Give me one moment. I'm looking for one page.
That lasagna was good, too.
Wonder how much it costs.
We were not back there eating lasagna.
I got you some, Dr. Price. Don't worry. Yeah.
We ready to go home. You talking about lasagna?
Hey,
All right,
thankful.
coming out of closed session, administration brings before the board for consideration of personnel to, number 1, accept resignations and retirements as presented.
So moved.
Second.
I have a motion by Mr. Renteria, a second by Mr. Campisi. Any discussion? Questions? All in favor, raise your hand. 6-4, 0 against. Motion passes.
We have one administrative election for elementary school principal of Victoria Walker Elementary School, Ms. Paige Burt.
So moved.
To approve. Second.
I have a motion by Mr. Clem, a second by Mr. Renteria. Any discussion? All in favor, raise your hand. 6-4, 0 against. Motion passes.
Number 3, administrator contract extensions as presented.
So moved.
Second.
I have a motion by Mr. Campisi, a second by Mr. Renteria. Any discussion? All in favor, raise your hand. 6-4, 0 against.
Number 4, non-extension of 2-year contracts as presented.
So moved.
Second.
I have a motion by Mr. Renteria, a second by Mr. Clem. Any discussion? All in favor, raise your hand. 6-4, 0 against. Motion passes.
Number 5, terminate administrative probationary contract as presented.
So moved.
Second.
I have a motion by Mr. Renteria, a second by Mr. Campisi. Any discussion? All in favor, raise your hand. 6-4, 0 against. Motion passes.
Number 6, non-extension of probationary contract, non-certified, as presented.
So moved.
Second.
I have a motion by Mr. Renteria, second by Mr. Clem. Any discussion? All in favor, raise your hand. Any opposed? Abstentions? Have 5, 4, 1 abstention. Motion passes.
Number 8, consideration of and selection of delegate authority to superintendent or designee to negotiate and to approve the contract and subsequent amendments with VLK Architects for long-range facilities planning and associated work.
Second.
I have a motion by Mrs. Barat Timms, a second by Mr. Clem. Any discussion? All in favor?
Yeah, I'm going to discuss. Yeah, I didn't know this was going to be an action item, but, you know, I really think we should table this matter because I don't think that, you know, we have all the information we need to make this a big a decision for spending money right now.
There's a motion on the floor that we have to vote on.
Yeah, but she asked for discussion. So
Yeah.
I can talk about it.
Of course.
But you can call for closure if you want to do that.
Just discussing with you that we have to vote on the motion.
I get it. And I just said, if you want to call for closure, go ahead. But anyway, so just wanted to bring that out.
Any other discussion? All right. All in favor, raise your hand. Any opposed?
Well, yes, I'm opposed to that. I'm opposed to that.
Okay, can we do that again?
Yes.
All in favor, raise your hand. Any opposed?
I'm opposed.
I have 5, 4, 1 opposed. Motion passes. And go ahead.
Recommend for adjournment, ma'am.
All right. Meeting adjourned, 9:51.
Everybody go home. The strawberry shortcake was good too.